What's happening, Hardscapers? Today we're laying some porcelain. Let's get into this. In the past few episodes of this project, we demoed a concrete patio. We did our most difficult excavation of the year. We built a seat wall and did some curved caps, and we built some steps. Now we're preparing the base. When we prepare the base for our projects, we're usually using an open graded material. This is a 3/4 inch clean aggregate that allows the water to go right through it. And for our bedding material, we use an HPB, a 1/4 inch chip that is clean as well. It doesn't have any fines in it. It allows water to go right through. And we like to use Geogrid in our bases when we prepare an open graded or really any base. This helps stabilize the material that we put on top of that Geogrid. So typically we try to put it as low as possible in our base, but sometimes we put it about midway through our base as well. This way we're providing our client with a quality product. And if any of the terminology that we just used here or throughout this video confuses you at all, we've got videos on all of these aspects linked in the description below. Okay, we set up a string line here for along the foundation. Now I did my math from whether we go from this point or this butt out point to the end of our patio for our actual steps. And it seemed that the best way to go about this is to lay from the far foundation, only because this juts out a little bit there. So we're gonna have to play around with that little cut. And then, so we've got our string line going down and across, and that's going to set our first tile. And I made sure to measure, we are 2 feet out from that string line there. Now that throws off something here as I was thinking there, because if we are 2 feet out, that's an entire tile plus the spacer, and then we're gonna have this awkward cut, thin cut in here. So I'm going to change that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go laying from here as opposed to laying from there. That way there's a small cut there, almost a full tile, and then a no sliver along this little foundation here. So we chose to begin our screeding from the far side of the patio. The main purpose of that is that's where we're going to start to lay from, because the actual seat wall is curved and we're going to have a lot of awkward cuts there. So it makes more sense to start where we're going to start with a full piece and then move our way, and wherever we land with our pieces along that seat wall, they're going to get cut anyways. So we start screeding from that end, set our screed bars, and we do that by measuring where the elevation is of our patio, where it's going to land on those steps. And then we just move over and keep it fairly level towards that far end where we're starting to screed. We're gonna have a slight slope in that direction, so not completely level, because most of our water is gonna end up in that area where we're going to actually install a catch basin. Now, when we are installing porcelain, it's a little bit different than when we are installing other product like pavers. We still use HPB as our screed material, but on the border, we mix HPB with this TRASS bedding material. It's a compound that mixes in with the HPB. We mix it in a concrete mixer, and then we actually adhere our porcelain using an elutriant on top of that. That is our edge restraint in this sense. Our porcelain is only 1 inch thick, so our TRASS is going to solidify like concrete, but it's going to remain permeable still. And then our elutriant will cure our porcelain on top of that TRASS, and those aren't going to go anywhere. Now for our actual field of our lay, where it's going to be right on HPB, in this case we back butter our porcelain still, but not with that elutriant. We use a Type S mortar mix and we lay them onto that HPB, and then make sure each of them are level to one another, and we still keep that 1/8 of an inch slope moving away from the foundation. Even though this is a permeable system, we're using 1/8 inch joints, so we do want a still slope away from the foundation and towards our grass area. The reason why we don't lay directly on HPB with porcelain is because if you do that, you get a creaking and a rocking of that laid porcelain when you're walking over it. So it doesn't sit firmly on that HPB. But when you back butter with Type S mortar, it takes away that rocking and creaking that you get when you're walking over it. It minimizes that movement. Now, doing that entire patio with a TRASS bedding mixture would completely take away any movement, rocking, creaking, but that gets very expensive very fast. We've done 2 porcelain patios now with this Type S mortar mix in the field, and the TRASS bedding along the border, and it's worked out really well. Porcelain doesn't interlock the same way that interlocking concrete pavers do. Porcelain doesn't have the same aspect ratio, especially with that depth, that 1 inch. It doesn't provide enough jointing compound depth to be able to sustain a load on top of that pavement. And that is why we have to use another method to be able to lay our porcelain. You can see that we stopped our screeding right at that base layer of the seat wall here, and that just allows us to continue to lay up to that seat wall and beyond it. The reason why we lay beyond it is it's easier to make our marks for cuts, so we can actually see exactly where that seat wall ends up, where our porcelain lays past it, and then simply cut in place. This is much easier than building up our seat wall completely, laying as close as we can to the seat wall, and then taking multiple measurements, especially since it's curved, to be able to get our cuts. In this way, we get perfect cuts with our porcelain along that seat wall. All right, we've got this porcelain patio in the back here, and we're going to be doing quite a few cuts. We're gonna have tons of cuts. We've got cuts along the steps here. We've got cuts coming along here. What I like to do for these is, especially when we're building a wall, is lay past the wall, and then I can follow the line of the wall and draw my line based off of that, giving myself about a quarter of an inch, because we do want a little bit between the wall and the porcelain. And then I'll start with a score. And what I'm going to be using for this scoring is the Milwaukee 9-inch. Doing my first pass at the score. It's also much lighter, so it's a lot easier to control and a lot easier to get that perfectly straight line without using that level. Now this is going to be my most difficult cut because we got that straight edge to follow, but this is where it starts to curve and I don't quite know where that's going to be, so I draw my line. That's my first line. Then I draw my next line off of this one. That's my second line. And then I know on the back end here, I've got 1, 2. So it starts to curve somewhere here and somewhere here to get me that final curve. So I know that these are 10-inch blocks. Now if I take my tape measure from here to here is 10 inches. I can go from here to here and know that is 10 inches, which makes sense because I'm right at my vertice there. Plus I want to add a quarter of an inch. So we're at about 10 1/4 there, and it's on this opposite end. So if I follow this line straight, 10 inches, I'm gonna end up about here. And if I follow this line straight, I'm gonna end up about here. So if I draw that line, there. So we got this, and then we're gonna have one more going here. So if I draw this line, 10 1/4. So when we are marking curved cuts, it's always nice to have some 3/4 inch conduit, or if you use plastic edge restraint, also that plastic edge restraint works for this as well. And you just pick points where you're going to put some weight on either side to be able to curve it to wherever you like it. So we're coming off this step, we want it to be in line with that step. And now I'll still mark this, even though it bows out here, we're going to remark it so that's a straight line. So you can see it comes straight, but then it bows out this way just a little bit here and then comes back in. We will put our 8-foot level on this and then make sure that's a straight line. But then wherever that 8-foot level lines up, we will start to actually start that curve. So we'll match this, and then it'll curve nicely into this edge of the wall. You can see now that we're starting that truss, I have my employee mixing it up. And putting it in place there, and that is our 2-foot area plus at least 4 inches beyond the final pavement, and that gives us a solid edge restraint essentially. And for those edge pieces to cure properly on top of that, it needs to be mixed, and we need to lay on top of it the same day before it does start to cure. Laying porcelain's super tedious. You think with these 6 square foot pieces that this would go down no problem, but having to back butter everything, get everything level, especially since these are smooth, large format, you don't want major lips in between pieces. And not to mention all the cuts that we had on this project, there are cuts almost everywhere except along certain parts of that foundation. The good thing now about having done a couple porcelain projects is that I've got my production rates for porcelain, and I'm ready to continue to profitably estimate porcelain projects. And we do that using the How to Hardscape headquarters software. This is our software that we've developed for hardscapers. It helps you budget, estimate, time track, schedule, job cost, and so much more. If you want to learn more about that, the link will be in the description below. When we're back buttering our porcelain, we make sure to stay away from the edges, at least a little bit, so that when we place that porcelain into our HPV or our TRASS bedding, it doesn't expand into those joints, clogging them up. We want to make sure those joints are remaining permeable, that water is going to get through them. To wrap up our porcelain project, we use a resin jointing compound. This is going to remain permeable. It's installed with water, so we dump it out of the bag, immediately hit it with water, and squeegee, we're using a broom in this case, squeegee it around into those joints, and just using a lot of water to get that down to the bottom of the joint and working our way around the entire patio doing this. This stuff is a lot more costly than polymeric sand, and it takes about twice as long to install compared to polymeric sand, so that's something that you need to consider when you're choosing this product. The good thing is you don't have to wait for a sunny day for an installation using this. And that is our final result of our porcelain patio with our seat walls, steps, and even our fire pit for this one. Hey, I hope this video has helped you in some way. If it has, please give this video a like, comment below any questions you may have, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more hardscaping content like this. Thank you so much for watching.